Another news story of a police killing is actually an update on Police Sergeant Hugh Berry and the case of Deborah Danner. We're going to be joined momentarily by one of the members of the Progressive Army as she was reporting on this. She actually reported this. Jamie Miller reported on this a year ago, and she did an update on this story earlier today. But Deborah Danner was a mentally ill New Yorker, 66-year-old black woman suffering from schizophrenia. She was known to the policing agencies. She was known to the New York police. They had to come to her home several times before. And in this instance, she took out a bat because of the police being in her property, and she was shot to death by Police Sergeant Hugh Berry. The update as of today is that Hugh Berry was arrested on the 31st today for in the shooting death of Deborah Danner. He faces charges for second-degree murder, first and second-degree manslaughter, and criminally negligent homicide, according to unnamed sources in the NYPD. This arrest follows, according to the reporting on ProgressiveArmy.com by Jamie Miller, this arrest follows months of investigations into the death of Danner, who was 66 years old at the time and suffered from schizophrenia. Mayor de Blasio and the police commissioner, James O'Neill, stated at the time that Berry had failed to follow the proper protocol for dealing with suspects with suspected mental health problems. And so this is the first step in pursuing justice for the murder of Deborah Danner, which took place over a year ago. And on the line, I'm joined by the author of this piece on Progressive Army. Jamie, how are you today?
I'm fine.
Listen,
yeah, I'm good.
Thanks so much for reporting on this originally a year ago and for the update today. I gave the audience some of the background on this story based on your reporting at ProgressiveArmy.com. Tell us a little bit more about the charges against Officer Berry, and tell us a little bit more about Deborah.
Deborah Danner was 66 years old. She had schizophrenia. The NYPD knew of her situation. They'd been called to her residence before, but, you know, this time, the last time they were called, it ended differently. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it ended with her death, her tragic death, and it took over a year of investigation for them finally to press charges. But based on what you're reporting,
7 months, not a year.
Not a year. Okay, so 7 months, and so but originally they did take his badge, right? So early on they suspected that something was wrong. Tell me a little bit more.
Well, Mayor de Blasio and the police commissioner, O'Neill, came out right away and said that, you know, this wasn't good. He had not followed proper protocols in dealing with mentally disturbed persons.
Mm-hmm. And so by not following the proper protocols, this exposed him to not only losing his job, but finally, after 7 months, he is being charged. This is actually a huge thing. I mean, it's so rare that we even see police officers being charged. I mean, of course, this is not justice yet. We have to see the actual trial to see if they're going to actually find a jury of his peers who are going to look at this case and say, yes, he's guilty of any of this, right? You know, maybe not first degree, second degree murder, but first degree and second degree manslaughter. We have to have a jury to actually get us that far. One of the things that stood out, and this is what you captured in the piece, was a 6-page essay titled "Living with Schizophrenia," which was given to the New York Times by her lawyer. And I want to read a piece of this. And she said, "We are all aware of the headline news stories about persons with serious mental illness who commit horrendous acts of violence, a minority of the mentally ill. We are all aware that all too frequent news stories about the mentally ill who come up against law enforcement instead of mental health professionals and end up dead." And this was written by Deborah Danner before she was killed. And as she is talking about the reality of living with mental health issues in the United States and having to deal with the police officers who are not mental health officials or experts. Oftentimes it leads to the death of a person who's struggling with mental health issues. Jamie, just get the last word and tell me a little bit about what you thought when she wrote that and anything else regarding this story.
Well, it's true. I think there was a study, I can't remember the people that did it, but I think it's in the first article, that people with mental illness are about 16 times more likely to be shot by police and killed by police.
And this is a tragic case. Jamie, listen, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate you keeping us up to date on this story over at theprogressivearmy.com. And all the best. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And this is the truth, right? The fact that Deborah all but predicted her death based on the reality of what people who are struggling with mental health issues have to go through when they are faced with encounters with the police. It's a very tragic story, but a story that's all too common. A story that's all too common.